Linda begin. Welcome everyone to the May WIFS meeting. Zoom, I think, has become our new norm and probably will be for a couple of months. I was actually speaking with Vivian yesterday. Hi, Vivian. Glad to have you here this morning. It was nice to speak with you and good to see you face to face. We're talking about what our future looks like. And so this will probably be our platform at least for a few more months. And typically we break for July and August because it's travel, holiday, vacation time. We may still check in with each other and, I don't know, do some virtual like happy hour networking things. And we would love that. So I would love your feedback on that as well, if that's something that you're interested in. I'm not sure if we're still sheltering and only doing absolutely necessary things, or what our governors and what the vacation spots will look like. So we'll talk more about that, and we would love your input on that. We want you, even if you're not a member, to find value with WIFS, because we really just, you know, the lady said, are your tribe, but the women that you surround yourself with and where you can find value. We hope that we are one of those platforms and one of those places for you. Just to introduce Linda, I met her a little over a year ago, and I believe it was at a NABO event, but then she and I connected out of the blue. We both went to this conference. It was a freebie, and we ended up having lunch, and it was probably one of the worst times in my life. My mother was getting very sick, and I lost her last year. But Linda has just been a source of strength and a rock for me. And then our relationship has progressed professionally over the past year. So I want to express the thanks to her. And she has pivoted also in her professional career. And so it's always great to see women in leadership and moving forward, and how we can support those things. And so we want to give her that platform today. So this is what we are going to talk about today. And she was part of a startup that achieved over 100 million in annual sales. She's been through every stage of a company can go through, including fast growth, rapid decline, to complete transformation. And I think we're all in a little bit of that right now. In addition to inspiring others to begin their bourbon journey through the Whiskey Chicks, Linda is the owner and founder of I'm going to get it wrong. Execuity. I forgot the T. All right. Thank you so much. Where she serves as a strategic advisor to CEOs and business owners, increasing their business valuation through additional sales, tighter financial control, and higher client retention and diversification. She's committed to paying it forward, utilizing her experiences as COO, CFO, and CEO to help others succeed in getting the most out of their business and career. Linda, we want to give you that platform now. Thank you so much for speaking today.
Thank you. I really appreciate you inviting me to be able to kind of share my passion. And my passion that since I started Execuity, it was all about taking the experience that I gained when I was at Accent, and actually, which is the company that I was at for almost 19 years, and paying it forward and sharing my experience and hopefully helping others actually achieve their version of total world domination. And it's something I believe in pretty strongly, that everyone can achieve total world domination. And what it begins with is really just understanding what it means to you. It starts with having a dream, and a big dream. And sorry, I'm trying to move. It starts with having a big dream. And so for each of you, I just want you to think for just a moment and envision your future. And for some of you, some of that's probably changed a little bit in the last 2 months. You know, when you think about it, what is it that you want with your career? Maybe you're a business owner and trying to figure out where that's going to go, and really begin to envision what that might look like. Things regarding your family, maybe the legacy that you have, that you want for your life. And the one thing is, just stop for a minute and answer the question. If nothing was holding me back, I would love to what? Once again, think about that. What does that mean to you? If nothing was holding you back, what would you do? Depending on what you do, or, you know, your line of work, things have either gotten tremendously busier, or things have slowed down dramatically in the last couple months. And for some of us, it's become an opportunity to just stop for a moment and ponder what direction your career is taking, or your business, or your life in some ways. You know, today we're going to take Simon Sinek's advice, which is we're going to start working towards our dreams. and you have to start somewhere. So just a little bit more about myself. I spent 19 years building a business from about 5 million to 100 million. It was probably one of the most amazing journeys of my life, and very blessed in the fact that I had that opportunity to kind of go through that process. It provided me a lot of insights and a lot of life lessons, both good and bad, of things that worked and didn't work when it comes to running a business. There were many mistakes made along the way, and there were many triumphs. And so today I use that experience to really work with owners of small to medium-sized businesses, helping them understand and achieve their version of total world domination. And I do that through exit planning. And this is where my business has shifted quite a bit in the last few months. And it really is beginning to focus on more on the exit planning. The whole concept is taking a holistic and synchronized approach to exit planning, where you're balancing out both your personal, financial, and business goals. And a lot of times when people think about, when you're looking at your goals and you're looking at your business, a lot of times you're focusing on that business. What does the business need to achieve? Is it more sales? Is it more profits? What do I need to do to restructure that? But part of the process that's missing many times is, what do you need to do on the personal side? Particularly if you're a business owner and you're looking to exit your business in the next 3 to 5 years, or maybe even 5 to 10 years. A lot of where business owners, when it came to selling their businesses after 1 year, there was a study done, and 3 out of 4 business owners profoundly regretted selling their business after they sold it. Now, it's not because they didn't get the price they wanted. It's more about because little or no thought was given to what they would do after they sold the business, and or they didn't plan properly for the future. And part of today is more about, what is it that you want with your future? It's a little bit about your business, a little bit about financial, and a lot about personal, because that vision of total world domination has to be more than just business. It has to be a balance between those 3 things. And part of what we're going to go through today are just a few things just to get you started on the journey. And so we're going to start by just, how do you prepare for the journey? I'm going to take you through a few different exercises that'll help you begin to think about, what is your version of total world domination. Everybody's going to be at different stages in their life. Some are new into their career. Some may be considering a change. You might be considering starting a new business. Maybe you're looking for a promotion, or for many of us, you're being faced with unforeseen circumstances that are really driving you to have to change. Whatever it is, it's always better to have a map to help you get started on your journey. So we're going to kind of go through some grounding concepts and some thoughts and ideas of how do you get started on your journey itself. So I always like to start with your compass. A compass is a grounding point. And if you've ever seen a compass, you know that it's usually a simple round object that just has a small lightweight magnet in it. And what was interesting when I wanted to understand how a magnet worked, it's all about balance on that pivot point that allows it to move freely. And on one end, the needle is often marked with an N for north, since that end of the needle always points towards the North Pole. Well, it's kind of like, this has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. We didn't have GPS up until a few years ago. And so a lot of times the directions that we were taking, the directions that people went on their journey, was all driven by this compass. And this compass with a grounding place of always knowing where north is in your journey. And you have this thing that just basically tells you where you are on Earth. And so they work so effortlessly because they go through a magnetic. They're basically responding to magnetic forces in the universe to help guide where it is you're going. And it goes back to that Earth's magnetic field and that central part, that grounding place within Earth that always points towards north. So when you think about yourself, a lot of times it's finding what is your compass and having your compass that provides you with the information on which way you're headed on your journey. And it gives you the ability to shift course in another direction without getting lost. So you can be moving down a path towards one goal, and that you might have to shift a little bit, but instead of going completely off course or getting lost, having what that grounding point is and knowing what your grounding point is is going to help you stay on course to what you want to achieve and keeping you in the right direction. So the first thing I want to do is I want you guys to look at this chart. There's a lot of words here, and hopefully everybody can see it. There's a lot of different words here, and I want you to take just about a minute, and I want you to pull out 5 or 6 words in here that really resonate with you, especially when it comes to your core values or what's important to you. And write those 4 or 5 things down, and then we'll talk a little bit about them. So does anybody want to share a couple of the words that stood out for them?
Linda, I'll share. It's Kalinda. I saw a word that I want to strive towards, and that's playfulness. Being in the financial world, people think, oh my word, and the minute they hear that you're in insurance, they almost want to just turn you off. So I always want to try to strive to have a little bit more playfulness or lightheartedness in what I say or do. Yeah. Along with honesty, respect, and passion, but playfulness was one of the ones I wanted to focus on more.
Awesome. Anybody else? So all of us, when we look at this exercise, and the point of this is really to start to get your grounding point. What are the values, or what are the things that are really most important to you, and what things stand out to you? Because those are the kinds of things that you want to keep in mind as you start to create the roadmap of where you want to take your journey, as you start to head towards this vision of total world domination. You always have to know what's important to you and keep that in mind. You know, when I coach businesses on when they're starting out or when they're maybe in the middle of a crisis, one of the first places I begin is actually stopping and looking at the core values. What are the core values of the business and what's important to that business? And some businesses are can readily kind of rattle off what it is. Some rattle it off, but you can tell they don't believe it. It's not evident in their business. There are some that are just kind of deer in headlights, like, what do you mean core values? Why does that matter for my business? Well, core values are really, once again, that becomes your ground of where it is that you're heading towards. And knowing that and being able to embrace that and understand that is going to help you stay on course as you kind of continue down your journey. So this is something I encourage you, just take some time to think about. What are your core values, and what are those things that you need to maintain as you kind of go forward in whatever it is that you're doing? So the next thing I want to do is, does anybody know who this is? You get bonus points if you know. All right, so this is Abraham Maslow, and his work was centered on the premise that every person seeks to reach their fullest potential, or the state of self-actualization. And his theories proposed that those who achieved harmony with themselves and their surroundings would be able to find the most happiness and the most fulfillment in their day-to-day lives. It's based upon Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a theory in psychology that comprises a 5-tier model of what humans need. And a lot of times, many of you may have seen this depicted in the vision of a pyramid. And the theory is that the needs lower down in the hierarchy must be satisfied before individuals can begin to attend to the things that are higher up. And from the bottom up, the hierarchy, the needs are physiological. So physiological is the basis, which is we all need food, water, warmth, and rest. The second being personal is safety. So personal safety, financial security, health, and well-being. We have to feel safe and secure in those things. The third is social belonging, friendship, kinship, and intimacy. The fourth level is around esteem, that you are able to achieve. You've got achievement, you've got independence, you've got respect, you've got status. And at the very top is self-actualization, the realization that your personal potential through growth experiences, that you're able to experience those things. But as you look at what's kind of happened in the last couple of months, a lot of our hierarchy of needs has been shifted. They've been shifted for you. They may have been shifted for your customers. They may have been shifted for your friends. Some of us have gone back down to just basic physiological needs. There's people out there who don't have the physiological needs to be able to take care of their family, to take care of themselves. Some of us, maybe some of the safety that we were working towards before and that we had in place from a personal financial standpoint maybe has changed quite a bit, or health and well-being has shifted to where it's making that social piece a little less important. Or maybe that level of, before all of this happened, we were working towards that esteem stage where we were working on achievement, independence, respect, and status. But just like in a pyramid, if that bottom layer isn't done, or the foundational element isn't there, it's very difficult to achieve all of the rest of the things, and you have to work your way up. And so as we kind of go and we think about total world domination and what that means to you, some of it is you've got to think about where you are today and how do you kind of manage those things before you can start envisioning where you're going to go next. So part of that begins with this exercise. You know, I always like to take a positive view that everything in life is done for a reason. And even some of this that has taken place, while it's really hard to explain and understand why we have to be dealing with the situation we're dealing with, you can either sit on the sideline and pout about what's going on and just be very frustrated, which is okay. Sometimes you have to sit down, as I like to say, I got to sit down and cry and, you know, get in my tub and cry for a little bit. That's okay. But at the end of the day, I also have to get up and I have to move on, and I have to figure out how to keep moving, because if I don't get up and keep moving, I'm never going to get anywhere. I'm just going to sit there. So one of the things is stepping back and looking at, okay, what can I do with this situation? How to make the best of the situation? But one of the first things you have to understand and you have to take inventory of is, what are your wants, needs, and fears? Now, I use this exercise a lot of times when I'm working to create customer personas for my clients, where you're trying to imagine who is it on the other side that you're trying to sell to, and really trying to get into their mind of what it is they're thinking and they're feeling and what they're wanting, so that you can kind of position your business or position what it is you're offering over towards those wants, needs, and fears. But over the last month and a half, one of the things I've been encouraging everybody to do is stop and think about what are your wants, needs, and fears, because those things have changed dramatically for many of us over the last 2 months. So taking a moment and thinking about what are those wants, what are those needs, and what are those fears, and looking at it both from a work standpoint and from a home standpoint. And many of these things may cross over, but it's taking a moment to think about that. So I'm going to stop for just a second. I'm going to give you guys a few minutes just to do that, to kind of put your head down and just to really think for a few minutes. What are your wants, needs, and fears from a work standpoint, and your wants, needs, and fears from a home or personal standpoint? So I'll give you about 2 minutes to do that. Maybe about, give you another half a minute. So normally, if I'm in a classroom doing this, I'd have people break out into little sessions to talk a little bit about, you know, what's changed for you and your wants and your needs and fears, um, and really begin to think about how, for many of us, some of those are the same and some of those are very different. Does anybody want to share? And I'm not going to call anybody on the spot because this is a very personal exercise, a very introspective exercise. But if anybody's willing to share, that'd be great. So for myself, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's Rita. I'll share. Sort of in my needs and my fears category. To me, it sort of mixes together. But there's definitely a fear of bringing COVID-19 into your home and making people around you sick, right? And so from a work needs point of view, you know, I want to be available, and I want to be able to reconnect with my clients face to face as things move forward, and as we shift some of our restrictions on face to face meetings. And I'm sort of planning for that. But at the same time, I have this fear in the back of my head of how much risk am I creating in doing that until we get through this second bump, and what does that look like, and how do I meet, if I have customers that don't share my fears, you know, how do I present that message if they're asking for face-to-face meetings that I'm not comfortable with, in ways that that don't impact their assessment of me as a professional and what I can bring to them. Because I'm not a person who typically goes to security. That's not the norm for me. So it's a really weird place for me right now to be spending more time thinking about security.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, and I'm sure there's many on the phone call that can relate. I see a few heads shaking as well, and that they can relate to that. And it's, you know, it's so common that, you know, it's about, there's expectations that are put on us, and some of that fear comes from those expectations, and how do we react to those, and are we able to meet those expectations or not? Anybody else want to share?
I'll share for just a minute. What I thought was interesting, Kathy Kicklighter, is that my work wants and needs are very similar. So like if I really want my business to be a referable, repeatable practice, it's kind of already there, but I constantly feel like I should be pushing it to that next level. But I thought it was interesting when I went to go do the needs, it was like, well, I just wrote them all down on my wants, you know? So I don't know if anybody else had that or not. And I think since I'm a financial advisor and I work in the thing, I prolonged depression, and that the thing I'm telling clients, because we are in unprecedented times, is a you know, but that's always how I felt for 28 years in this business every time this happens. So I kind of go back to my history. But you know, sometimes the long hours, and I'm like, I'm 59 years old. I don't know if I want to work this hard anymore. And yet I have to work this hard. It's important for my clients that I work this hard. So I think that's all part of it. But I just thought it was really interesting that my wants and needs for work were pretty much on the same page. And then my home, I was really I didn't have a whole lot. I was kind of like, just to keep the status quo as to what I already have.
Gotcha. Well, Kathy, thank you so much for sharing. And, you know, sometimes those wants and needs do line up. But it's important for all of us, is that you found that it very much lined up, which I think is really great. But for some of us, it's really trying to distinguish between what do you really want versus what you really need. And I know for me, I struggle sometimes to figuring out what those things are, because I think I need everything. But then I really kind of go back and know, you know what, this is really what I need. This is what I need to survive. If I go and I look at that Maslow's hierarchy of need, and those first two layers, this is really what I need. But then when I go to want, that's when you start moving up on that hierarchy of need, and start to think about and prioritize that, because the needs absolutely have to be met, right? They're the things that you absolutely have to achieve. And the wants are the things that I really want to get to. They're more aspirational and that type of thing. So all of us all have different perspectives on it. And I appreciate yours, because in business, a lot of times it is the same thing. And it is, you know, for myself, is that I want my clients to be successful. I want to be able to service them. And at the same time, I need them to be successful, and I need to be able to service them. But at the same time, is trying to look at it through those different lenses, is that there's that place where it's a very subtle shift in your lens of how you look at the want versus the need. And, you know, read the same thing you have is, you know, you need to serve your clients and you want to serve your clients, but then you also are looking at, you need safety and you want to be safe, and figuring out how you prioritize things is really part of this. And you got to play into your fears. Our fears are real. You can't ignore your fears, because if you ignore your fears as you're going through this journey, you're going to stumble. You're either going to make mistakes because you're not thinking clearly, or you're going to get stuck when you didn't plan on getting stuck. And the more you can acknowledge up front, these are the fears, these are the things I'm afraid of, you can start to plan for them. You know, it's like being on a journey. I know I need gas. You know, I know I'm going to have to stop along the way to get gas. If I don't, then I'm going to run out of gas. So maybe your fear is, I'm going to run out of gas along the journey. So I need to figure out and plan ahead that somewhere along the way, I got to stop and get gas. If I'm taking a long road trip from one end of the US to the other end, I have to stop and think about what I need along the way and how that helps us, you know, address the fears that I might be carrying along. Anybody else want to share? And thank you both for doing that. I really do appreciate that.
Linda, I'll just jump in and add one more thing to what you were saying, because, you know, what I think is true is that oftentimes we're in denial about our fears, or we're not really willing to name them. So we may hold fears like, I'm going to make a mistake and I'm going to look bad, and that's going to cost me a client, or, you know, things like that. So I think there are fears that run through the back of our minds that we don't always get honest with ourselves about. People tend to either fixate on their fears and get stuck by them, or they tend to live in denial. And, you know, but there's a whole continuum between there.
Well, and I don't know if you found that I found a lot of fears come from a lack of control and your inability to control situations. And the more, and part of it is where I've been successful is I've actually tried. I've not always been successful, but I've tried really hard to acknowledge what it is I'm afraid of, and to figure out, you know, acknowledge it, but then move on and acknowledge it. No, that's there. So if that's going to be a factor along the journey, I either address it or put it to the side and know that that's there, and try to move forward from it. But taking that inventory really does make a difference, I think, when you do that. I think the other piece here is, as you've kind of gone through this for yourself, another exercise you can do outside of this is stop and think about what has happened with your clients. You could use this for a specific client that's in your portfolio, or you could use it for the clients in general, or the prospects that you're reaching out to, and acknowledging and kind of really get into their head a little bit about what are those things that are thinking, what are the things that have changed for them over the last couple of months, and how does that change the way that you service them, and how does that play in with your own wants and needs and fears. Because Rita, like you had mentioned about this fear of safety. Well, some of them are feeling the same way, and some of us feel like, oh, we got to suck it up because everybody else is sucking it up. Well, there's also others that are like, you know what, I'm not ready to suck it up and leave my house yet. I'm going to sit back and wait and see how this thing goes. And you have to figure out what's important to you and how you react to it. But it's acknowledging that that is a fear, and you can take specific action based upon that. Mm-hmm. So with that, now that you kind of know where you are with your wants, needs, and fears, now it's time just to pause for a moment and think about how that changes your priorities, and really start to think about how does that change some of your personal, financial, and professional goals. Some of it may just be getting through the next couple of months. Some may be very basic, and where you are and what it is that you're going to do next really needs to come from what's right now in your life, and balancing those things of your wants, needs, and fears that you're balancing out at work and at home. It's also thinking about your core values, and how do you once again protect those core values as you're going through this and not compromising your core values. The other big thing that's going to help you get through and achieve total world domination is really about who you are and what your strengths are. So you know, it's much easier to achieve your dreams when you use your strengths. And there's several tools out there. One I really like is Now Discover Your Strengths. It's the Gallup strength-based profile. There's DISC profiles, there's MBTIs, there's what's the other one I'm missing? There's one out there that just kind of looks, I look at a graph and I'm kind of like, okay, I don't quite get it, but somebody else can read that better than me. But the big thing is really understanding what are the strengths that you carry along with you. And the way I kind of explain this when I'm working with my clients, especially those that have never really done much of assessing their strengths, and I'm a big believer in the Strengths Finder, is stop for a minute and let's say you're in college, you played sports. Let's say that you were a golfer. A golfer in high school. You were a golfer in high school and you were a really good golfer, like, you know, outperformed everybody else. You would, you know, really scored and was like the star of your team. And your dream college comes to you and says, you know what? I want to offer you a full ride scholarship. I want to offer you everything you need to be successful. I'm talking room, board, all kinds of fringe benefits, the heck with NCAA regulations. I'm going to give you everything you need. But there's only one condition. That one condition is that instead of playing golf, I want you to play tennis. And you're looking at him going, tennis? Why would I play tennis? I'm a golfer. Well, and I look at you and say, well, it's basically swinging something and hitting a ball. Why is that any different? You know, you hit a ball with golf with a club, and in tennis you hit a ball with a racket. I don't see the difference. But let's say you take that scholarship. What happens? When you go and take that scholarship, you're absolutely miserable because you don't understand the game of tennis. You've not really played the tennis other than maybe in the, you know, the back of a schoolyard somewhere when you were 10 years old playing around with your brothers and sisters or with your mom. And you never really played tennis seriously. You're miserable. Guess what? Your coach is also miserable because you're not basically performing the way they want you to perform. Everybody in this situation is absolutely miserable because they brought you in to do something that you're just not good at. Well, in business, that happens all the time. And we all fall into that trap from times in our careers where we get so enthralled with the benefits and the things that are coming at us and the bells and the whistles being offered to us and the flattery that comes with being offered that full ride scholarship or that big salary or that big opportunity. And we don't take time to think about, does that really fit who I am? And by not understanding who you are, makes it harder for you to say no when it's not the right fit. And I know for myself, there are points in my career where I was miserable because I wasn't using my strengths. I wasn't using what I was good at. And the better I understood what I was good at, the better I was in defining what it is I wanted to do and how I wanted to do that and under what conditions I like to do that in. And so as you're kind of going down your journey and thinking about where you want to go, what total world domination looks like for you, I highly encourage you to really stop and take inventory of what are your strengths. What are the things that you bring to the table? What are the things that just come natural to you? And compare them back to the goals that you might be, that you have, and make sure that the two line up. Because, you know, you may be a great golfer, but that doesn't mean you're going to become a champion tennis player, especially if those skills just aren't there. Now, as I went along my journey, I received advice along the way. And one of the biggest pieces of advice I received, and one that I tell everybody on a regular basis, is in life, you can choose to take passengers or hostages. And passengers make the journey much more enjoyable. And just to kind of share a little story that relates to that is that, you know, I was at Accent for 19 years. And there were times during that 19-year period, I just was ready to throw in the towel. I was ready to quit. But here I was with a highly lucrative job, a lot of responsibility. I was able to use my strengths on a regular basis. And so there were days I'd come home and be upset. My husband like, you know what, let's just figure out how we push through this. Let's figure out how we make it happen. And then there were other days I came home and I was excited and thrilled about what I was doing, loving what I was doing. And so many times it balanced more toward the positive than the negative. But towards the end, it started to get very political. Our parent company started to focus really heavily on the financials and less about the people, which misaligned with my core values. My values were always about the people, my belief that, to get the best customer experience and the highest profits is to provide the best experience for your employees. And so when those started to misalign, it became pretty bad. I was never have been and never will be one of those people to play political games very well. I am who I am, and you either take me or you don't. I will be straightforward. I'll do the best work for you, but I don't do politics really well. And so I remember coming home one night just completely and totally frustrated. And my husband looking at me and said, "You're done." And I looked at him like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You're done. You need to leave." And it was that moment in time that I'm like, "Really? That's okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, because this is the point where I can't, this is affecting us. It's affecting everything around us." And it was that moment that I really recognized that he was now ready to be a passenger on the next stage of my journey and not a hostage. And I think that's really important, is that as we kind of go through life and we think about where we're headed, take inventory of those that are around you, the people that are most important to you, and figure out where they are. And as you're kind of going through this, is there place on the train for them on that train? Do you want them on the journey? And at the same time, stop and think. And this is where you kind of goes back to those wants, needs, and fears. It's also recognizing that their wants, needs, and fears may have also changed over the last couple of months. Things that were important to them before are not. I gave a talk a couple weeks ago to a whole group of female attorneys. And the conversation was, how do you organize through all of this? And a lot of frustration that was being expressed was the fact that my spouse is not pitching in. They're not doing their part. I feel like I have to take it all on. But part of what we talked about is, have you really talked to them? Have you ever really shared that this is what's going on and how you're feeling? But then also acknowledging that their wants, needs, and fears have changed along the way on this journey. And it's important that we acknowledge the people in our lives and look to them to take them on as passengers and not hostages. I know for my husband, it's been a lot more pleasant when he's supporting me along the way than when he's like, "What the heck are you doing?" So as you kind of go through this, the next step is to determine your destination and start creating the roadmap to get there. Now, in 40 minutes or less, I'm not going to be able to create your whole path to total world domination. And part of it is really just stopping and thinking about where it is you're going. It's taking an understanding where your compass is and use that compass to guide you. It's knowing that there's going to be pit stops along the way and starting to plan for those pit stops. There's going to be unexpected detours and flat out roadblocks. I mean, if we haven't appreciated how big of an impact one thing in life can change everything around you, these last 2 months have really demonstrated that there are roadblocks and detours that you could never, ever plan for. And we're all going through that right now. And this is where you kind of lean on your strengths and you lean on that compass to help you get through each one of those obstacles and really figuring out how do you kind of work through them. And being prepared to take a new direction based upon the conditions that you're facing, but always remain focused on the destination. The more you have the better, clearer picture you have on where you want to go, the easier it is to stay on track. If you're looking at a map and you're just trying to go, I could go north, I could south, I could go east, I could go west. Maybe I want to go to the beach. Maybe I want to go to the mountains. Maybe I want to go to the East Coast or the West Coast. Think about how zigzag that's going to be if you're not sure where you're going to go. It's not just getting in your car and driving, it's getting in your car and actually having a destination of where you're headed. And it's also important as you kind of go along this journey is that you're taking the right people with you. Make sure there's room in your car for the people that are most important to you. Recognize that there will be people that are going to be with you through that whole entire journey. And then there's going to be others that you're going to pick up along the way, others that you're going to drop off along the way. And that's okay. It's all about getting towards and working towards that end destination where it is you're trying to go. The last and most important thing is just to get started. That take these few minutes that you've spent just kind of thinking and contemplating, and after this, just stop and think about what is your vision for total world domination. Start to create a clearer picture of what that is, and then start to plan around it. The most important thing is just to get started. and you have to act to achieve. So with that, I'm Linda Riefeneck, and here's my contact information. If I can ever be of help to anybody on this call, just to even talk or even just to think about how they're doing on their journey or just ideating on where they might go, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always here to help. That's one of the things I love most, and it's my strength is being able to help clear out and organize some of these thoughts for people and have them see different things that maybe they didn't see before. So here's my information, and Kalinda and Rita and everybody else, I really do appreciate you guys having me here today and sharing my version of how you achieve total world domination.
Thank you so much, Linda. I have a quick question for you, though. I saw on your slide that after your Linda at Execuity, there were 2 dots. Is it supposed to just be one?
It's supposed to be one. That would be a typo, Kalinda.
I just wanted to make sure that we're not.
No, thank you.
Why can we not get in contact with you? And I thought maybe I just wanted to make sure I had the right.
No, I appreciate that.
Everything. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Fantastic presentation. I took 2.5 pages of notes, so I was very excited
wow.
to.
Well, thank you.
For reals. I mean, all of it. 2 pages of notes.